Hey guys, guess what?
What?
Indiana Jones, directed by Steven Spielberg.
Wait, weren't you gonna do the podcast intro?
That that's what I'm
That
doing.
wasn't
That
the intro.
Well, you should.
I was.
How
Do
are the
you want?
commuters?
Yeah, we're the commuters. All right. Actually, let me actually do the intro then instead of interrupting me, Basil.
Uh,
Jeez,
well, just do it right, and I won't have to.
it,
Oh,
do it right. We've never once done
shots
a right
fired.
one. Hey, it's the commuters. We watched some. Oh god damn it!
Yeah.
I suck at this. Steven Spielberg directed Ready Player One, and now we're gonna watch or we did watch Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is my personal favorite of the Indiana Jones films. I really, really
You
don't
mean
want to
it's
talk
not
about two
Temple
of
of
them.
Doom?
Yeah, wait, what?
I said you mean it's not Temple of Doom?
I
Wait,
mean,
what?
why would I like Temple of Doom? I don't like Temple of Doom.
Good. Temple of
Okay.
Doom.
I feel like there's only two answers to someone's favorite Indiana Jones
Yeah.
movie, and that's Last Crusade or Raiders.
Wait, you mean not Crystal Skull? The best one? It's not even comparable.
Hot take:
Oh.
Crystal Skull was better than Temple of Doom.
Gonna have to disagree with you there, Chancho.
I think for the first half of the film,
Yes.
first half of the film, I'd actually agree, except for the one scene where he survives a nuclear blast and.
Yeah, no, I on no metric can I agree with that.
I don't know. I didn't hate Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, it's
I
I
did.
hate where the idea was going.
nah. He was fine.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. This movie. So obviously, I said it's my favorite in the Indiana Jones movies,
Right.
mostly because I have a strong attachment to one the topic that or the like the legend essentially that he's chasing. I
Right.
really really like the idea behind it talks about the Crusades and
You
also
like Grail Quest stories?
yeah, and that's the thing that like really got me into this movie. On top of that, the movie it gives a little bit of insight into Indy's childhood, and it also lets us meet his dad for the first time,
Yeah.
which I think both of those facts like are what pull me into this movie so much more than Raiders.
Mhm.
But like I think that's a personal taste thing. I don't think it's because this movie is
Yeah.
better made than Raiders. There's things in this movie that I definitely think like Raiders can do way better. Also, it was the first one, and Raiders had this like really nice, fresh feeling to it, whereas this one is the third one, and you're coming off the heels of Temple of Doom, which people are like, eh. So, if you get where I'm coming from with that,
Yeah, I think-
Spencer, you and your memes right now.
You don't like these?
No, I like all of them.
Yeah,
I
good.
really do. But God damn it!
Oh my
I was
God.
All
like
right, all right.
watching Harrison Ford eat seductively.
Here, you can watch that, and I'm gonna mention I really, really liked the inclusion of the young Indiana Jones scene. I know you mentioned it, but it really sold not only who Indy was as a character, but it kind of showed exactly how far back that stretched. You know, because this kind of not only was the first chance for us to see him outside of his, confident, adventuring, swagger that he always has with him, but we also actually got to see where he got his style from. One of the Tomb Raiders raiding for that big giant golden crucifix that they pulled out of the rocks there. He had the hat, he had the leather jacket. He didn't have the whip, but that was, kind of the whole style of Indiana Jones. And he behaved a lot like Indy would later on, so I thought that was interesting. I kind of wondered what happened to him. I don't even know if that character had a name.
That character also looks a lot like he's got like this very vague Harrison Ford look
Yeah.
too.
Oh yeah,
which is
Yeah.
pretty cool.
I think it was funny that they both managed to cast an alternate Harrison Ford and a young Harrison Ford better than the Han Solo movie was able to cast a young Harrison Ford.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Okay, so I'm gonna come on the complete opposite on that part.
Mm-hmm.
That's the weakest part of this movie for me is the opening. I don't hate the idea of going over young Indiana Jones, but did we really have to see? Oh, this is how he got afraid of snakes. Oh, this is how he got his whip. Oh, this is how he got a scar on his chin. Oh, this is how he got his hat. Oh, this is how he got his style. Like I like the mystery
We
of
didn't
like
have to, but it was definitely fun.
I don't I like I didn't have an issue with the kid actor. I thought he was actually really well casted and did a good job. I just
Let me
was
ask you
like,
this.
well, can I
Aside,
finish my point? I just there's a air of mystery to Indiana Jones and like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom that I'm like I really dig. It's like this dude's just he's an adventurer. He does his junk. Like I don't care where he came from. I don't care about any really that. Like what brought
that's
him
kind
to
of the
this
point of this whole movie is showing where he came from with his father and his father's history and obsession with the Grail. You know, this goes to show why it is that Indy both pursues what he does and hardly ever gets super into mythology. I mean, he opens his lecture in this movie telling kids to not look so deep into mythology, don't believe ancient legends, that they're all convoluted, and most of the time they're going to lead you to your death. You know, that's his mindset from the get-go because he's had to grow up with his dad obsessing about mythology and ancient legends.
Too bad.
Ancient legends.
Too bad Crystal Skull didn't learn from that.
point.
I just
Okay.
realized that whole movie is that.
Yeah,
It's like the
basically.
total opposite.
But
Yeah, I mean, I think the young Indiana Jones scene, you could probably have shortened up the chase scene and whatever, you know, the action scene if you really want to make that point. I liked it, but I'll concede that it was not necessary. What was necessary is that we see some facsimile of young Sean Connery, you know, Indiana
Yeah,
Jones, or
I can agree with that.
Henry Jones Sr., you know, even when Indy was young, being obsessed with the Grail and so into his work that he, you know, wouldn't even hear about Indy's first adventure, practically.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the opening scene is essentially, like you mentioned, Solo. It's just Solo, but not a whole movie. Or I should say, Solo is that scene, but a whole movie. And it's like,
Mm.
it shouldn't be a whole... Because, like, literally in Solo, you're like, oh, you learned how he got Chewbacca. You learned how he got the Falcon. You learned how he got his gun. You learned how he shot first. Ha ha ha. You learn all of these things that
You
nobody...
learned how it
his
meant
name.
Lando.
How he got his name, Solo. Like, no one... I just didn't care about any of that stuff. And then this is
Well, see, there it is. You're making the comparison that no one cared when it's just that you didn't care.
Well,
I liked
majority
seeing
of
what
people...
happened with Indy.
The majority of people didn't care
Don't go,
about Solo.
don't go making claims for majorities. Just say you didn't like it.
No, it's easy to make a claim when the movie bombed heavily.
No, I'm not talking about Solo. I'm talking about this. I'm saying that I liked seeing young Indiana Jones, how he got his style, his fear of snakes. It was all very specific things.
Yeah, that all
I thought it
happened
was neat.
within 20 minutes of each other.
Who cares? I liked it.
I will concede that I have to agree that I do think it's a little silly that we get all of that established in his character, though not. All right, when I say established, by the way, I don't mean like, oh hey, the first like 20 minutes of the movie just like, or no, it's the first 10 minutes. My bad. The first 10 minutes are all dedicated to that, but like, it doesn't. It helps show that he has always been a character who to like
Whoa, your audio's
And-
cutting out, dude. You want to try that?
Oh,
again?
is it? I'm sorry. I don't know why it would be cutting out. Is that a little better?
I
Yeah.
can hear him fine.
Yeah, I can too.
Oh, maybe it was like on your end, Basil.
Yeah, I mean, it was your fault, Basil.
Well, since I'm recording, we might want to make sure that I can hear you.
Maybe. Yeah.
So just start
Uh,
again.
Anyway, so yeah, I don't have a problem with establishing factors of a character through a flashback, essentially, to his young life. And I do find it a little silly that they introduce every single little thing that like determined a lot of what we know about his character. But the important parts, like his desire to protect history and relics of the past and all that, and preserve them, it's like established in his character as a kid before we even get into the whole like, oh hey, here's where he got his hat, here's where he got his whip, here's
Yeah,
where
yeah.
he I think that's the more important part than just being like, oh look, here's these items that have a semblance to his character.
Yeah, I agree. Also,
So
Also, the
Mom's
part
gonna
Spencer
be-
mentioned with his father, I mean, I think the most important parts from the beginning, like you said, are establishing his character, how he views like history and wants to preserve it, and then the relationship with his father as a child being established right away. I think those are really the most important and best parts of that opening. The other parts, I guess you could call fan service or whatever, but it didn't really like those parts didn't resonate with me as much as the character parts with the father and the historical artifact.
Oh, definitely. It wasn't nearly as good, but I wouldn't go out to call them bad parts. I would only say that they were unnecessary or bad if there was something else in the movie that I wish they would have established or devoted more time to. And all I can think of is things that they could have trimmed out a little bit.
Yeah.
Or that were perfectly fine as is. Like, I can't think of anything else that I would have rather seen a little bit more established. It was all very well paced. I would say the scene where they go to Berlin to retrieve the journal book from the doctor character. I mean, I know I'm kind of jumping ahead in plot, but I feel like that was something that could have been completely trimmed out. It was just a vilification scene, you know. Ooh, Nazis burning books, bad.
Yeah,
I mean,
I loved that.
I love that scene too.
The part,
I love the entirety of the Berlin sequence.
the part where Hitler autographs his book was one of my favorite parts in the movie.
I get my favorite scene in the movie after that, which is the dirigible scene. Or it's like
I
one
will
of them.
say that it's redeeming factor to me because, like I said, it's not a bad scene. I just don't think it needed to be as long or as prevalent. But the dirigible scene is definitely worth it to get the setup for that whole contingent.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna describe. I always look at this movie as a series of like really good moments because
Yeah.
that's really what it is. I mean, it makes it so that I never feel bored when I watch it. Like I've watched this movie a lot.
Yeah.
It means something to me. But like every time I go back through it, I'm like, oh yeah, young Indy, and then you go into, oh yeah, he got the artifact back in the future, and then it's like, then you jump. Like you got his whole sequence where you do a lot of stuff that feels a lot like Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you introduce a girl, he starts going on this new adventure, and but then it like pushes itself in a whole new direction because you turn, spoilers, she's evil, she's a Nazi.
And she fucked his dad.
I know. They really...
I loved how underhanded they were with it.
Yeah,
too.
right.
It wasn't at all on the nose.
No,
it was
not at all.
very, very low key.
She
How do you
talks
know
in
she
her
was a
sleep.
Nazi? She talks in her sleep. And then the face, just
It's so good.
And then, you get that whole sequence where him and his dad are strapped to the chair, or to their two chairs, and they're, oh my god, that sequence is always so much fun.
Which part of the sequence?
The whole thing. I
The
really
whole
like
thing?
the whole thing.
The
Yeah.
whole thing was great.
I think my favorite scene out of that whole exchange, if we're just jumping around, I would say is when they make it into the fireplace and they've gone around in circles at that point, and the kind of interflashing back and forth between the like radio Nazi headquarters in the background, and Sean Connery looks to him and says, "Our situation has not improved." I think that is the quintessential line from most of the comedy of the Indiana Jones franchise.
I mean,
They're in a bad situation. They try and make it better. Something else happens, and the situation is not any better for Indy. I think you could sum up all of the comedy with that line,
Yeah.
which is not a
Honestly-
bad thing. I just thought it was so enveloping at large.
honestly, I think during the whole scene, my favorite part was when they finally like stopped and they were inside the headquarters, and they looked at the lady commander, and they both smiled at each other, and then she was like, "Ah!"
She just screamed.
She just
Um,
screams.
By the way,
I
those guys-
love it.
Those soldiers have stormtrooper aim.
They really do.
Well, where do you think stormtroopers came from, my guy?
Whoa, no way. You don't say?
Your mind was
Based
just blown. Yeah, I loved something that these movies I don't think get enough credit for. Like, especially in a world of Marvel superhero movies where everything's like comedy. Like the comedy in this movie is so well done. Like one of my favorite parts, and it's just like very like they don't say it with like this kind of setup where like they have this pause moment after the comedy where they're like, "Oh, you're supposed to laugh here, insert laugh." But they just kind of tell the joke and keep moving, but like the joke just lands, or at least for me, like the part where Henry hits him in the head with the vase, and then like he goes over and he's like, "I'll never forgive myself," and he's like, "Oh, it's not that big a deal," and he's like, "Oh wait, thank goodness it was fake," and then you realize that Indy the whole time thought he was talking about him. Like that's just very like,
Exactly.
and it's very like just played straight, and then they don't have like because like it doesn't feel artificial, I guess would be like my way of saying it, because there's
Oh
like
yeah, and
especially
Sean
like,
Connery did such a good job with that too, of playing that character who cared more about artifacts and the history of things than Indy. Period. I
oh
mean
yeah,
that was the whole point of that first scene was to establish that, and he never dropped the ball.
yeah.
The apple didn't drop far from the tree.
Ha
If you
ha
know what I'm
ha
saying.
ha ha ha.
I mean, it's crazy because like every time I watch this, I'm like, yeah, you can see a lot of Indy in his dad though, despite their like
Oh,
weird
yeah.
relationship. It's really really cool. Also, we gotta say they picked the perfect fucking person to
Mm-hmm.
play. I love Sean Connery so much. Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
he's so good in this movie. I don't really think anyone else could have played him as well as
Junior.
Junior. I can't do a Sean Connery. I wish I could.
We called the dog Indiana.
Right.
You are named after the dog?
You want to name that.
The dialogue in this movie is really snappy.
It's
like,
so sad.
ooh,
Gotta say, throughout watching Crystal Skull, all I could think of was how bad the relationship would have been between Henry Jones Sr. and the Shia LaBeouf's character. Like Indy almost hated him. I can't
Yeah.
imagine what Grandpa Jones would have thought.
Yeah. It does kind of stink, too, that I mean, because Sean Connery was alive. I think he's still alive.
He was alive, but the time skip wouldn't have made sense.
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah.
Yeah, he would have been pretty old. He'd been like 90.
Right. I mean, he's still pretty old, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I was so soundtrack wise.
Oh,
It's so good.
Magnificent.
It's always good. I seriously could never say anything bad. Even Crystal Skull, I like the soundtrack a lot.
yeah. I'm
Is it-
like, if you look at the Star Wars prequels, in my opinion, best part of those movies is the soundtrack. Like, John Williams doesn't really put out a bad soundtrack. Like, he may put out ones that are more like kind of just, that sounds a little forgettable, or just sounds like John Williams.
Background tracks that
But-
aren't the highlight of the movie.
Yeah. But like when he really like when it's a series like this where he's working with Spielberg or Lucas, he makes insanely good soundtracks.
hmm I would say that I think Last Crusade has the best soundtrack, in my opinion,
I
for the
agree.
Indiana Jones films.
Yeah, I
I
definitely
mean,
agree.
you can say that the first one is more quintessential, just because it was the first Indiana Jones, and every track is a classic. But
Yeah.
you can say that about Star Wars too, and I think I still enjoy Episode 3's score pound for pound more than any of the original trilogy
Yeah.
scores.
I mean, hell, even I'm not the biggest fan of the new Star Wars movies, but like Episode 8 and 7 both have really strong soundtracks.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's
I'm sorry. That scene is like still. I always talk about how it's my favorite scene in the movie because it's comedy gold. Oh, oh man, this
And I love
movie-
too that they didn't throw that character. Well, they did throw him, but they didn't throw him away in the plot. They had him back in the tank to be a recurring villain.
yeah.
And I thought that was kind of an interesting bit too, just because of the choice of vehicle. I mean, it was a British World War I tank owned by a Turkish sultan, sold to Nazis.
That's kind of like my favorite thing about this movie is just like how they like when the Sultan they're like oh, we brought you all this gold, and like this is just a beat that didn't really like it didn't need to happen. They could just give the Sultan gold and be on their way. And he's like, no, he wants the Rolls Royce, and then he just goes over to the car, and you're just like, okay, like it's such a thing to me where like people who are like writing a script or something wouldn't think of something like that's just like fun,
Nazis got a flex, dude.
right?
Oh, another thing that I found pretty funny, on the comedy aspect, is when Indy was going to, getting back his dad's journal, and they were at this, Nazi gathering in Germany, and then he, in the whole uniform with the journal in his hand, bumped into Adolf, and then Adolf took his book and autographed it.
Oh yeah. We mentioned that earlier, but like, hey,
Did
it's
we?
a really funny scene. Yeah. Basil brought it up because he thought it was pretty funny. Because we were thinking about because Spencer said it lasts a little long, but like that scene is like that scene does represent the comedy in this movie too. Like you could have something. You know what? You wouldn't see that nowadays because
No.
people are so uptight about the way that they
Yeah.
create film.
Exactly.
I love
They
that.
would go, "How dare you make me laugh at Hitler? Hitler was a bad guy."
The
Whereas
irony.
the comedy back then is everybody laugh at Hitler. He was a bad guy.
Yeah.
Humiliating.
Yeah.
The irony also that like Hitler's super into the occult stuff. Like
No,
they had
yeah,
a
that
whole-
was a note that I made too watching the movie. That normally I am super against the hey, we need a bad guy for the movie, make them Nazis. Just I don't like the typical trope of making the villain, a faction in the world that has been, universally hated so that it's easy to associate them as
yeah.
a villain. A villain should stand on their own 2 feet regardless of history or association. And I think all of the villains do in this movie. They are villainous in their own right without having to wear a Nazi flag, period. But I also don't mind, because like you said, Hitler was incredibly into the cult,
Yeah.
He was searching for UFOs, he was looking for ancient artifacts and spears and all sorts of shit. So it's not even out of the realm of possibility that the Nazis spent gold to go look for the Holy Grail.
Yeah. Also, a thing to consider when talking about the Indiana Jones movies is they're based off of like 30s, like
Of course,
the
and-
serial, like adventure things, and the perfect,
Yeah, the villains
Can't
were
be
always
enemies.
the
They're the
Nazis.
Nazis. And
Or
it's
the Reds.
yeah, and
And
it
who were
works.
the villains in Crystal Skull? The Reds.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing too. That is where I'll give Crystal Skull some like props. It's based in the 50s. The enemies at the time would be the Reds, and the big thing everyone was obsessed with in the 50s was aliens. So it kind of
Right.
makes sense that that's what the story follows.
It's too
But
bad
Basil, they weren't aliens.
Oh yeah, sorry, they're extra dimensional beings. Anyways,
Oh,
back to the villains though. I do think that Donovan and Elsa were great villains. The only issue with Elsa though is she just couldn't let it go.
I hate you. Die.
I'm so upset.
I thought it was interesting because Elsa really wasn't too striking of a villain. She wasn't villainous. She was just working with them because, she was the foil to Indiana Jones's character in the sense that she was still incredibly interested in the Grail and wanted to find it. Whereas, I'm getting off track. She was the foil to Indy in that she was doing exactly what he's done in the past, looking for artifacts, just working for the wrong people with all of the money. And whereas he didn't care about the Grail in the first place, and he was just doing this to find his father and, protect him, make sure he was okay, she was only concerned with the Grail, and she didn't care who got hurt.
Yeah.
And you saw how that ended up for her.
Yep.
Right. Because she wasn't really a bad guy. She was just working with the bad guys. She didn't mind getting her hands dirty to get what she wanted.
Hell, I mean, a similar argument could be like I would say Donovan's not necessarily he's not really a Nazi. He's just using them. But
Exactly.
he's extremely like way more selfish. Like obviously he just wants to grow because he just wants to live forever. Whereas
Right.
Elsa
His
wants to
logic
grow.
was, who cares who wins World War II? I mean, he didn't know about it at the time, but just figured, who cares who rules the world if I'm going to outlive every single empire after it?
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the idea though that this whole movie is about the Holy Grail? Because like, we technically have 2 movies in the Indiana Jones, like things that are about like some form of like very powerful MacGuffin. But like, are you okay with it in this case?
I mean, these types of movies always have a MacGuffin. Even in Temple of Doom, there were the artifact or whatever.
It was
I
the
don't even.
it was a big rock in Temple.
Exactly.
Just a big rock.
So it's fine. And my question would be, how do you guys feel about both of the story-heavy Indiana Jones movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Last Crusade, both being about Christian artifacts?
Well,
That's fine.
So you could make the argument that the Last Crusade's about a Jewish artifact, and
You could.
this one's about a Christian one.
It-
I know that gets a little murky, but
Right.
I don't really for me, it's like the issue with Crystal Skull and Temple of Doom to me isn't the artifacts. It's kind of what happens around them. I feel like you could pick any kind of mythology and I'd be okay with it as long as the story is compelling.
Right. I mean, I guess more or less what I'm trying to insinuate is that how do you feel about in the mythos and the world of Indiana Jones, religion has been confirmed for Indiana Jones. God is real. Otherwise, the Grail wouldn't have worked, and the Ark would not have had everything come out and do the whole face melty scene.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't think about it that too hard because I mean, also extra dimensional beings are confirmed, and then there's also like demons and whatever.
Right.
So like,
there's a lot of things that happen to be true in the Indiana Jones universe.
But it's like I don't know. As long as they don't take it too seriously, because you don't.
Yeah, which they
it's
don't.
just fun.
Indiana Jones, even though he's presented with all of this evidence that he's experienced first-handed to the contrary, he always has this kind of attitude of, I don't know what's true or false. I'm just kind of here for the ride. I want the shiny rock.
I mean, hey, I like that it keeps them very grounded in reality. If he suddenly went like tinfoil hat on us, I would have many problems. That's why I find his character still somewhat enjoyable in Crystal Skull because he's still Indiana Jones to a degree. It's just the rest of that movie is like a mess.
Yeah.
Right.
That just kind of says how good a character he is because he's so grounded.
Yeah.
Despite, I mean, he literally witnessed. Well, technically didn't. Now I think about it, he turned away, but witnessed a bunch of Nazis melting and a dude growing old. Also, he found the Holy Grail. Like, it's crazy.
I mean, if he decided to do a book tour, this guy would be richer than God.
But no, he's all about preserving artifacts and museums and stuff. There's something very heroic about his character that, like, I think comes through really, really well, especially in this movie. That, like...
Go ahead, sorry.
I was gonna say, like, he got the Holy Grail. He essentially found the Fountain of Youth, like a way to stay alive. Well, not Fountain of Youth, stay alive forever. And in the end, he did make the choice instead to leave it behind, instead of potentially risking his own life.
Now, wasn't it that outside of that cave, the Holy Grail had no power?
Yeah, that's what it seemed to me.
Yeah, but he still probably wanted to, like, preserve it.
Yeah, you could bring it to a museum.
All I was going to say is that aside from the oath that the last of the 3 Templar brothers said that he swore he'd protect the Grail, he didn't need to be there at all. He could have left the Grail in the cave where, the only place that it could be used with all the traps, because no one had gotten there in 700 years. I mean, hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
But if the Grail's power was just resigned to that cave, I don't think you could have led a world-domineering empire out of a holy cave.
Wait, what?
Because the whole point was, Indiana Jones kept saying, or Indiana's dad kept saying that the Nazis would send an army of darkness unable to be killed across the world and dominate it and blah, blah, blah if they found the Grail. The Grail was just a cup outside that cave.
Yeah,
so really, there was no threat. It was
To
just
be fair, though, you got to remember, that's also assuming he knew that.
Yeah, which
like,
he
no
didn't.
one knew that.
I don't think
he didn't.
No one knew that.
I think it was more...
the Crusader did, and that's all I'm saying, is that the Crusader, having known that the cup wouldn't work outside the cave,
I think it was...
kudos for him staying there anyways.
I think it was a matter of staying to protect this artifact that in which you and your men-in-arms, your brothers, all protected.
Yeah.
Like, you search for this thing. Imagine, like...
It's kind of like the people who guard the unmarked grave, is it, in Washington? Or the grave of the fallen unknown soldier?
Yeah.
I forget the name of it, but, no one needs to guard those, technically, because no one's going to deface them. But it's still nice, and it has significance and ceremony to it that someone's there.
Also...
The unknown soldier.
Thank you.
You're talking about, like, religion stuff. This night, he's doing what God told him to do. So, I mean, you could just make that argument. That's God's like, hey, stay here and guard this until you're replaced by a new guard. And he's like, okay, I will now stay here for 700 years to guard this. But I think that's kind of the point. It's just like an honor thing. But,
I mean, he is a Templar knight.
Well, he was just a Knight of the Crusades. They don't really specify he's a Templar.
I got all right. Well, I would say he's
I know
a
there was still a functioning order at the time, because in that whole Venice chase sequence, when they found the tomb of the Holy Knight with the shield inscription, one of the guys with fezzes who were chasing them around Venice, they were the Brotherhood of the Crucible Sword.
Yeah, but that's
who
not
were-
the Templar symbol's different.
I'm not saying that they're the same. I'm just saying that there was a Holy Knight order still existing in modern day.
Oh, okay.
Apparently.
Gotcha.
Even though they never used them more than once, which
Well,
I found was a little odd.
They use them twice.
Did they?
Because they show up at the end when the Nazis are trying to get to the Grail, and they help Indy shoot the Nazis,
Oh, right.
and then he dies. But the dude from earlier, not Indy, obviously. What I did like, though, we were talking a little bit about Indy's character and like how he's into like he's here to preserve these artifacts and to preserve history, and that's why I do think the Nazis really just work, like even more so than the Reds. Because the Nazis' whole shtick was, oh, we're gonna rewrite history in Hitler's image, and he's gonna change everything so that way it's the Third Reich of the whatever. But that's kind of their shtick.
Was always and always will be Germany and blah blah blah.
Yeah, right. So that's why I think it's actually kind of perfect, and that's why, in my opinion, I really do like the burning book scene and stuff, because it's showing what Indy's fighting against, and why this is they're so diametrically opposed ideology wise, because he's here to save this stuff, and they even make points about that. Right. Like Henry's like, maybe if you guys spent more time reading books instead of burning them. But I liked that. I
believe the exact quote was "goose stepping morons."
Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else we really need to talk about, because oh man, we covered a lot of
we really did.
Mm-hmm. I think one part. I'm sorry to step on your toes.
No, go for it.
With Donovan in the cave was a brilliant move to shoot Indy's dad, because that was his whole motivation for being there in the first place, was to save his dad. He didn't give a shit about the Grail. If he could have gotten his dad in the journal and went home, he would have. But as soon as he found his dad cared a lot about finding the Grail and this whole thing, which is why I think it was good to have that opening sequence of showing him when he was young. Is because it just showed that Indy hasn't changed at all. He's still trying to win his dad's affection, and his dad still is fixated on this thing. So he probably figured, if I can help him find the Grail now while we're ahead and so close, I can get him over this hurdle that's come between us for our whole lives.
Yeah. One quick question. I can't remember what they said in the movie. Did his mom die because of the search
I don't
for
think
the
it was
Grail?
because of anything. I think she just passed away.
Insert mysterious illness.
Because I know, Indiana Jones kind of blamed his dad for diving into his work after his mother died. Because I believe that's kind of what it was implied happened, was Indy's mom died, and then instead of grieving with his son, he just sent him away to boarding school and delve deeper into his work.
Also, I think putting these memes in the chat was brilliant, and I'm probably just going to leave them there.
It's a nice thing to look at.
Yeah. I don't know. Does anyone, Will, do you got anything else to say?
Sorry. Harrison Ford as an actor, honestly, he's probably one of my second most favorite actors, ever. First being Robin Williams. God rest his soul. But Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones is one of the best they could have ever done. They picked the best type of person to play this adventurous type of, fighting type, persona.
Just a real brigand and brawler and adventurer.
Yeah, just a real brawler, seriously. And I gotta say, they chose Harrison Ford. Yeah, I'm repeating myself, but one thing I gotta say is that they chose a great actor to play the role of Indiana Jones, and I couldn't have seen it any other way.
He's got that roguish charm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you guys think that I'm not saying, to suggest an actor they could have used otherwise, but do you think the concept of Indiana Jones as a story would have worked with anybody else other than Harrison Ford as the lead actor?
So
Or
I
would have worked? Do you
It
think it would have
depends.
been as good?
It's one of those things where like I think it's just been I've become so ingrained in his character being Harrison Ford
Yeah.
that like
yeah.
it would be hard for me to say yeah totally, but like
It's like
maybe if when the first one came out I might have been able to see someone else.
You know
I
they
can't see anybody else being Indiana Jones other than Harrison Ford. I cannot. Like seriously, he plays the most perfect role.
they cast for Raiders. They wanted to go with Tom Selleck, and they ended up going with Harrison Ford instead because they couldn't get Tom Selleck.
Yep, and I I really love Harrison Ford's origin as an actor in
Oh, yeah.
general.
Mhm.
Carpenter and worker on movie sets who had done small acting gigs beforehand, but really hadn't worked in a large capacity outside of anything else. And then, Star Wars and Indiana Jones happened, and he's just catapulted.
Yeah. I mean, Star Wars was
Oh.
his. If I'm correct, Star Wars was like his first actual role, in a movie or whatever. Because they just
He'd played as extras or
Yeah.
small leading roles in television shows, or I think some westerns as well. He'd played in, but nothing
Yeah.
even remotely popular.
yeah.
Oh, by the way, I have an answer to what happened to Indiana Jones' mom. If you'd like to
Oh,
have some
yes.
insight, yeah, I decided to look into it real quick. She did die in 1912 as a result
Okay.
of scarlet fever, so it was
So-
illness.
Indy would have been 13.
Okay, so wait. In the opening of the movie, it was in 19. Wait, wasn't the opening of the movie like 1912?
Yeah, but this says the early half of
So
1912, so
it
it's
would have
possible it could have
been-
literally been that same year.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm
so-
saying.
Indy's mom had either just died or would die soon.
That would actually explain why, like, or you could make an argument that his dad like really just went off the deep end
Yeah.
at that time, and that's why it was like such a despondent like distance that formed between them as of that time.
Right.
Which I think like the sooner it happens, the more severe like
Mhm.
the aftershocks. How am I trying to sum this up?
No, you're
You know
just
what I
saying
mean.
that
Yeah,
it was
no,
a
I-
traumatic event that really influenced both of them throughout the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, just there you go.
Mhm.
And
I thought it
if
was
that.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was like, if that opening scene really did take place in 1912, then it's like, wow, that's some fresh wounds, man.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I thought it was
Right.
interesting too that the set that they used for Dr. Jones Sr., his dad's house, is the exact same house he was living in, I believe, as later on when he actually went to go visit his dad and found it ransacked.
Oh
He
yeah.
was still living in the same house with the same notes, and I noticed in the background too, during one of the shots, is a painting that shows people falling to their death in a gorge, but a holy knight holding the chalice, walking on air,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's in
and
the.
that was the second trial from the cave.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff around his apartment if you
Mhm.
look for it. It's cool.
Yeah, that was great. I think that's my favorite trial he had to go through of the
Mhm.
three. I mean, the spinning saw blades of antiquity were pretty cool, but
Yeah.
I loved just the whole era of movies out of Lucasfilms at this time.
Yeah.
You could wrap it up as with all of their amazing practical effects.
Mm-hmm.
Predating CG by head and shoulders, and it's breathtaking how cool of sets they were managed to compile for the variety of locations and scopes that they
Yeah.
told the story of Indiana Jones across. I mean, he went to Venice and Berlin and
Well, yeah, the opening in Arizona in the desert.
Mhm.
This is something like when we were talking about Spider-Man: Homecoming, and I was talking about how they don't really show the areas they're at with the cinematography is very like just close-ups and like shot reverse shot. But in this, like in the very beginning, you're these huge like open plains, and like you see these awesome mountains and stuff, and like I'm like, this is what I like. Like it really helps to kind of give the world this huge feel to it, which I really like that about it.
Yeah, I think this says the same thing about Raiders. Like set design is just it's always awesome. It always really does a great job of giving that feel of adventure.
Yeah,
Like
that's
I
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, like if you think back to Raiders, like the opening scene is just super iconic because you've got like the lush jungles and all that, and then in this one, like you said, you got these canyons with all the really beautiful rock, and just everything in this movie looks really, really good from a design standpoint.
Yeah, I mean that's where I give like Temple of Doom a leg up over Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because Temple of Doom, like say what you will about the story, at least like all the props, the practical effects they use, all the set design stuff,
Still top notch.
It's all, yeah, it's super high grade. And then you go to Crystal Skull and you're like Shia LaBeouf swimming through a jungle with CGI monkeys, and I'm like, no thanks.
I think where Crystal Skull really struck me as still being an Indiana Jones film was when they were in South America at that temple and they had the little tribal guardians of the temple running around between small holes and jumping around. That was still a practical set with real actors
Yeah,
that they constructed, and the big giant rolling stone trap thing that they had to circumnavigate,
yeah,
thing on the pendulum. I mean, definitely they had some CG moments that could have been written out in favor of practical effects, but practical effects are expensive.
yeah. No, it's just, man, yeah,
It could
yeah,
have looked way better, but I think, the soul was still there. I could see moments where I would look at it and go, yeah, this is an Indiana Jones film.
yeah. Anyways, anyone else got any final thoughts?
Uh,
Aside
I
from like our ratings.
Yeah, aside from our ratings.
Okay.
uh, not really, but I will say, going and looking up that info, I just dived back in. I totally forgot that there was like a young indie series way
Oh,
back. Like
Nope,
it
I
makes me
didn't. I loved it.
realize I never got to see it, unfortunately. So like I totally forgot that there's like a whole like like
There's
Indiana
Indiana
Jones.
Jones like mythos.
Yeah, he's crazy. I
Mhm.
oh man, it just makes me realize I'm really sad that we only ever got 3 films in the series.
Oh wait, we got 4.
Shut up. No, I don't think I have anything else to say. Will?
I don't. You guys literally just covered everything.
You don't have your own spice of life to add to it?
I would. I mean, if we're are we rating it now or?
Sure, let's rate
Okay.
it.
Let's rate it.
I'd say go. Spencer. All right, so I'd say watch it. It's a great film. It got adventure, it's got action, at all appropriate moments. The whole Indiana Jones franchise is one of my favorites, except Crystal Skull. But like the older movies, from Raiders to Last Crusade, it's amazing, and the way that they did it was absolutely phenomenal. And I would say that if you love like these old, like I don't want to say old, but like old esque, I'm gonna say old esque because I can
Classic.
types of films, I would say go watch it. If you love adventure, action, and Harrison Ford as an actor, I'd say go watch it.
I would see that rating and raise it, own it. This is a movie you should buy and have
Yeah, bye. Yeah,
in
bye.
your collection.
Put it in a museum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it in the museum and your collection. Because it's just a quintessential classic film, in my opinion. I mean, people point to things like 12 Angry Men and Casablanca. This, for me, is classic film. In the spheres that I am in and the movies that I like, this is the excuse the pun, holy grail of film.
Oh gosh.
Oh no.
All right. So yeah, we had a little bit of technical issues there, and this is just me and Sky are gonna re-record our audio for the verdicts that we had for Indiana Jones. Some technical issues with OBS. Apparently, since I'm new to OBS, that's something I have to get used to. All right. So my opinion, my final verdict on Indiana Jones: and The Last Crusade. An absolutely spectacular movie that is I would consider one of like the most iconic adventure movies ever made. It's a classic. It's one that you definitely should own if you like just any type of action or adventure movies. If that's like your shtick, then you should own it. If you're somebody who's only about like art films, then this probably isn't for you. But I definitely would recommend it to anybody. And even if you are somebody who's like, yeah, I don't know that I like action films, I would definitely recommend checking it out. And then if you still don't like it afterwards, that's fine. But I would just think you're crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
pretty good. I would say that, well, my verdict is obviously I absolutely adore Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. It's my favorite of the three films. Haha, see, Crystal Skull doesn't exist. It's pretty much just like you said, the quintessential action slash adventure movie. It's got good, compelling characters. It's got some wonderful jokes. The journey is fun. It's shot beautifully. It really feels like Indiana Jones at his best, at least for me.
Yeah.
And that's why like I'd always recommend someone go watch it because it's just such a good movie. Just like I'd recommend Raiders of the Lost Ark like anytime I watch it. I'm like, yeah, that was a good trip down memory lane. It's so fun.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and then our next movie, since we lost the audio.
Yeah, so well, I was gonna say Spencer recommended it, so we can in his honor imitate his voice and pretend that we're Spencer.
I can't fucking imitate Spencer's
I know,
voice.
I'm kidding. Or we could just not talk at all, and I think people will know what the movie is because of the silence.
I still think we should just say it's silence because it's gonna be a week.
Silence.
But yeah,